This sourdough coffee cake is the perfect comfort food for cozy mornings or for an after-dinner treat. It's warm, fluffy, and melt in your mouth good. And here's the good news, you don't have to be a master baker to pull this off. I'll show you what ingredients you need, walk you through the process step by step, and share my best tips to ensure that your creation comes out scrumptious every time. Before we get going, let's chat sourdough starter for a second. I keep my starter at 100% hydration, which means I feed it equal weights, not volumes, of flour and water. If you use a different hydration, then your coffee cake might have a different texture than mine. For this recipe, you'll want to use an active sourdough starter. An active sourdough starter is one that has been fed 4 to 12 hours previously, is active and bubbly, has doubled in volume, and passes the float test. First, we're going to make an overnight sponge. In a large bowl, mix together 1 cup or 230 grams of water and 1 cup or 240 grams of sourdough starter. I like to use a rubber spatula for this. Then add 2.5 cups or 345 grams of all-purpose flour and mix to form a shaggy dough. You can think of the sponge as basically a thick sourdough starter. Cover the sourdough mixture in the bowl and allow to ferment at room temperature for about 8 to 12 hours or overnight. The long ferment helps the flour to be more easily digestible. So the next morning, the sponge should have risen pretty dramatically. And now it's time to put together the sourdough coffee cake. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 177 degrees Celsius. Next, butter a 9 by 13 inch glass baking pan. I tested this recipe using a glass pan, so you'll need to adjust the baking time if you use a metal pan. Melt half a cup of butter for the topping and set that aside. Then whisk together half a cup of sucanat or brown sugar and 1 tablespoon of cinnamon in a small bowl, and set that aside as well. At this point, you can decide if you'd like to add 3/4 cup of pecans or 1 cup of blueberries to the mix. I tested this both ways, and either is absolutely scrumptious, but also optional. I'm personally partial to pecans, so that's what I like to use. If you do opt to use the pecans, then you'll want to toast them up and coarsely chop them now. Now you're ready to mix together the cake batter. Place all of the overnight sponge into the bowl of a stand mixer. Then add 2 large eggs, 1/2 cup of cane sugar or coconut sugar or sucanat, half a teaspoon of unrefined sea salt, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract, and 1 cup of butter that's been melted and cooled. There's no need to whisk the wet ingredients separately from the dry ingredients. However, I do recommend sprinkling the baking powder over the batter and breaking up any clumps. Now fit your stand mixer with the whisk attachment. Attach the bowl and whisk on medium speed until the batter is well combined. You'll most likely need to stop the mixer and scrape down the whisk attachment from time to time. The sourdough sponge tends to stick to the whisk, so you'll need to scrape it off in order for the batter to mix evenly. And you may find that you need to scrape down the sides of the bowl as well. You could also use a hand mixer to mix up the batter, but of course it will take more arm strength and undivided attention. After the batter is done mixing, pour half of it into the prepared baking dish and smooth it out to the edges. Next, sprinkle half of the cinnamon sugar mixture over the top of the batter. If you're using the pecans or blueberries, sprinkle half of those on top as well. Now pour the remaining cake batter on top and gently spread it out to the edges. Then top with the remaining cinnamon filling and pecans or blueberries, again, if using. Finally, drizzle the half cup of melted butter on top of everything. Doesn't it look amazing? Bake in the preheated oven for 25 to 30 minutes or until a toothpick inserted near the center comes out clean. You can also carefully cut into the center with a knife to make sure that everything is done baking and not doughy. Sourdough tends to take a little longer to cook completely, but it also tends to stay nice and soft. Let the sourdough coffee cake cool in the pan on a wire rack until warm but not burning hot. This should take about 10 to 15 minutes. Personally, I love to serve this with a drizzle of heavy cream. It's so good. You could also opt for whipping your cream, or if you're serving this as a dessert, a scoop of vanilla ice cream. I mean, if you have a slice of this and a cup of coffee or a matcha latte, then you'll literally be in heaven. It would be the perfect way to start your Sunday morning. By the way, I'll have a sample baking schedule in the description to help you plan out your bake. Now, if you'd like to learn how to make another scrumptious sourdough breakfast treat, then make sure to check out this video next. It has been fed powder over the batter. Bake in the preheated